I've just seated a few here, and the seating depth consistency on these things is crazy. The automatic force equals consistency. So, amazingly consistent. Obviously it's cool that you get to see it on the graph, but it's like wow level consistency. Jay Hire asks, what consistency did you see with your old press? Typically speaking, I would see within about a thou to a thou and a half of variance with most things. And it's hard to say which is attributable to the really nice inline die or the press itself. But if there was something wrong and it wasn't applying the correct force, then you'd see it in the overall length for sure. So it's very clear to me that it's putting very consistent force on it. I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to finalize my workflow here yet. Obviously, dealing with inline dies is just a little bit more of a pain than press mounted stuff because everything is free to move around and flop around a little bit. I'll show you guys the graph here. You can kind of see what's going on. We'll see the few that way. This is a big batch that I'm doing, so a pretty long session, about 280 rounds that I'm going to be seating here. So we're really going to get to see how this thing holds together in a long session. I might not stream that whole time. Yeah, you can see even amongst these, there's been a few of them that have spiked early right up in here, and I'm keeping those separate. I'm going to go shoot them differently, even though they drop back down and come into the median here when it comes to the rest of the curve. I'm just going to put those separate. I'm going to shoot them separately and just see kind of how they behave on target. It'll be interesting to see over time just one of these variables, you know, like that one being down toward the bottom of everything here. Would it shoot differently? Would this one that came way out the bottom over here? It's going to be interesting to see just how all of this plays out. Prime 7 var asks, has the brass that you're using been annealed with the amp? No, I've annealed this brass with my bench source annealer using a swirl flame torch tip that I've been using for the last over a decade. This brass, I think, has, I'd have to go look, but it's got quite a lot of firings on it. Might be as much as 13 firings. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of people doing a lot of testing. I've been asked several times, well, are you going to use this for your primary bullet seating press? And the answer is I don't know yet, but I can tell you what we are going to have. We're going to have a massive amount of data that's going to be generated from people using this thing. I mean, it's going to be a mountain of data. Honestly, I think it's going to take, for all the work that needs to be done with this type of an analytical tool, and then to go actually shoot the test and see what matters on the graph, and then correlate that to what matters when we're out actually shooting. This is going to be done for the next 10 years. People are going to be using this as the primary analytical tool to find that out. Yeah, see that really tall spike there right early on. I'm gonna keep setting those aside. I don't know if it's gonna matter because, you know, here the rest of it comes kind of right down in with the group, but actually, so I'll show you guys something interesting. I hadn't done any real prep to this brass, and so it's got a fairly sharp thing there. I haven't trimmed it in a few firings, so the chamfer from the trimming is kind of gone. It's there a little bit, but I'm just going to chamfer this particular piece. I'm just going to take by hand and put a healthy chamfer on the inside there. So now it's chamfered. So watch the initial point of this graph now. And keep in mind, all I did was just throw a hand chamfer on it. And bam, it spikes really quickly and very high, much more so than these other ones that I didn't put a sharp edge on. And you would think the seating force from a chamfered bullet, or excuse me, a chamfered case, you'd think that seating force would be less, right? It would require less force. But based on what we're seeing here, that's not the case. We'll go back here and do one of the normal ones, unmodified. Yeah, and you can see we are now, without the chamfer, we're back down into the norm. What's interesting is we're 40 rounds in and there's nothing that's just crazy out. So that tells me that in general, that my operations are pretty uniform. Obviously, if there was something wrong, I would have found that out during real shooting long before now, but the verification potential that this device has is pretty outstanding. Prime asks, did you use a nylon brush on the inside neck? The amp guys seem to bring that up a lot, like in a way of not needing neck lube. So I don't use neck lube anyway, and I tumble my cases in rice. And the rice tumbling that I do, the rice tumbling tends to make a very desirable inside neck condition. That's one of the reasons that I really like that method. So I haven't found the need to run an additional step there to kind of add another process, which I'm not really a fan of. So the graph can get kind of boring, so we'll go back to the graph if there's anything interesting to see there. If I've got something that greatly varies, I'm not expecting too many surprises. As I say, this is pretty well-known brass. It's a well-known batch of brass. So I think if I were going to see any surprises from it, I probably would have found it by now. But the analytical nature of this is so cool because I don't have to guess. I can just see it. I can see exactly what's there. And the consistency that the press combined with this nice inline die. Now I did show this earlier on, but let's just take a look at the last few that I've seeded here. Let's see here. I'll bring the camera over so this is a little easier for me to do. So we'll do the last 10 that I seeded. I mean, the consistency in seeding depth that I'm getting with this, I mean, everything is within a half of a thousandth so far. It's well inside of what a caliper can actually resolve to precisely. So when you're able to seat bullets this uniformly, suffice it to say that the bullet seating operation is not going to be the thing that holds you back. So yeah, I mean, that's the last 10 that I seeded all on camera here, and has been it's pretty crazy. There, you guys can kind of see just about everything going on now to some degree. Yep, JM Ramon says, chamfering it gets fresh brass exposed, no lube. Could also be causing a taper lock situation. See? Smart guy, smart comment, obviously. And that was my thinking as well. It puts a very sharp bullet on brass contact, whereas the brass operation and the tumbling op, where I'm using rice and leaving some of the existing carbon in the neck, creates a very desirable situation. So deviating from your established protocol is generally going to be a fairly bad idea when it comes to loading. And before you establish your protocol, you had better be using something to determine what that protocol is, whether it's no matter what op you're doing, you better be shooting it. You better be going and test firing everything. I've test fired all of my procedures individually and together in order to get to where I am with it. But this thing is just really cool to be able to see it on the graph, and over time being able to learn exactly what the different segments of this mean. That's going to be pretty fun. But I need a bunch of ammo to go out and work over the prairie dog towns, so I need to load up a pile of 6-dasher ammo anyway, so I'm just going to blast through this batch, and then the outliers I'm putting out separately, and I'll shoot them on paper against a batch of normal rounds, and we'll see if they shoot differently, and if so, how drastically so, and whether or not that correlates with what I'm seeing on the graph here that'll be fairly interesting. And then too, I just kind of want to stress test this thing and see, okay, can it take a long session? Can you really use it for a long firing or a long seating session and not have it overheat or do something stupid? Looks like I need to add some more powder to my Prometheus hopper here. Forgot to top off the trickler. Oops. I can't wait until they get the iPad app, because then I could just have an iPad down here and be tapping it. Having a laptop, it takes up just a ton of space on the bench. I kind of hate that. You know, it'd be really, really classy to have an iPad and you just slide it under there. That's going to be the final solution. I'll probably get a dedicated iPad just for this, just to run this thing, because that's clearly the most elegant solution that they could have for it. Barring that, it'd be nice if I had a little button, you know, like right here or right down here, where I could just tell it to go. I didn't have to go over here on the computer. That'd be pretty cool. But I think the iPad is that's the way. So once they get their app version created, that's going to be the ticket, I think. I wonder what I could do to... Well, we'll save that testing for a different day. I just need to get some ammo loaded here. But being as I was putting together a pretty long session, I wanted to do some streaming and show you guys show you guys the new amp bullet seeder. It's pretty cool. I kind of wish there was a way to set the elevation of the load cell. It kind of has some little sharp edge on the end of it, and it hits right there, and so like maybe over time that'll get broke in a little bit and kind of break that edge off. But it's a fairly sharp little thing, and it doesn't really like it when that thing goes sliding in there. But as long as you're deliberate about it. A little fruit fly cruising around in here. I hate that about summer, all the little bugs. Can you graphite a neck to see how the graph changes for us? Well, I don't know where I have my graphite. That's the thing I use. My rice tumbling kind of negates the need for having the graphite, but let me see what I can do to accommodate here for you. I have a random piece. I think it's been sized. Let's take a look here. Yeah, it's been sized. So I'm going to just scrub the daylights out of this thing. Okay, so it's a fired case, right? I'll bring you guys over here so you can see the graph really good, since we're doing that little bit of science here for NMJ Wolf. Okay, so I scrubbed the daylights out of it with a nylon brush, and now I'm going to hand chamfer. I'm just going to put a really aggressive chamfer, so like very much chamfered. Very different from the ones that I'm seeding now. And of course I'm not going to put any powder in this, but here goes. So we'll load this one up and go. Okay. So all I did was take that, all I did was put a chamfer on it, and I, stupid bug, I put a chamfer on it, I took and I just scrubbed the crap out of it with a brush, and look at the difference in that trace. It is astonishing how much different that is from my normal loads. So I put a chamfer on there. That chamfer is no doubt what caused this, that really aggressive chamfer. Now I had chamfered this one right here and a couple of these others just to demonstrate that earlier, but it was what I would call a normal chamfer, right? It was a light chamfer, like a correct chamfer. This was a very aggressive chamfer, and of course this case, I just pulled it out of my junk bin over there, and I just scrubbed the neck with a brush, with a nylon brush. I scrubbed it, and the deviation from my norm. You know, this is a case that guys would shoot. Like, they would load this and shoot it with their other rounds. And I'm telling you from first-hand experience, there's no possible way that this case, regardless of what you see on this graph, if you change your process to that degree, you will never get a positive outcome on the target. They'll all be different. Like, so segregation of your brass and your different cleaning methods, you need to be doing that stuff. I'm getting the fly swatter because this fruit fly needs to die. He keeps landing on my face, and that's a mistake. Okay, so there we see, like, man, worst case scenario, crazy. Now the cool part is I can select that thing because I don't want it screwing up the rest of my test, right? So I can just go, boop, delete it, and it's gone. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Don't have to worry about it cluttering up my figures. So I didn't change that case that much, but yet look at the seating force difference. That is an indication of, wow, okay, if you see something like this going on, because we're 55 traces deep here, that's 55 rounds deep. And so when you see something that's like this going on, it's a strong possibility that even the worst outliers are not going to shoot that drastically different. But again, we'll test that. I'm not going to just think that. That's something that's going to have to be proven. So we'll see. We'll see whether or not testing bears out that that is true. I'm thinking it might. So yeah, I'll tell you what, we're gonna set you guys up back here so that you can kind of see some of this going on. Freaking fly. Alright, back to our regularly scheduled program now that the science is out of the way. I can tell everybody's super curious about this thing. The best way to get rid of that curiosity is to go and get one. And then you can see it for yourself. You do all the testing your little heart desires. I'm actually going to put that last one aside. It was just different enough. You know, it's kind of went out the top early and then right at the very top, and then it dipped back down. So I'm going to stick that one into the calabash there and shoot that with those other rounds to see how it does in live fire. You know, and then conversely, you have this one. It's like just about right in the middle of the road when it comes to the rest of the curve. Yeah, that one is like way out the bottom. I'm gonna call him too. I might be being a little too drastic with the rounds that I'm setting aside here, but we'll see. I want to go and shoot all these and see just how far out of, you know, like what kind of space does it need to occupy. You know, like there we've got 35, and I think, you know, what is that? Are they calling it foot-pounds or what is it? You know, I'm not sure what the force is. I'm going to have to read up on that. Let's consult our handy dandy amp manual. What does it say? Alright, after assembly, die setup. Okay. Because it talks about peak force, but like, what is that unit? Is it just their arbitrary force unit, or is it calibrated? You know, is it like X numbers of foot-pounds? That might be a question I'm gonna have to ask those guys. If I can talk to Alex or something on Monday maybe. But I wonder, like, okay, so bottoming out on the bottom end about 35 and the top end's about 40 and everything between, you know, how far out does it need to be? Is it 5 force units or is it 10 or something? You know, like that's going to be an interesting question to ask. Nope, came off my button. See, like a bigger, better button maybe would be called for. Yeah, see, that one's spiked. See, I'm basically culling everything that is about 36-ish and up. And so, you know, even if they come back down into the mean later, those ones that spike early like that, I'm pulling them out because I'm curious if that's going to matter in the slightest. Yeah, that one was kind of fell out the bottom there on the inside too. You know what would be interesting to see? I have some virgin alpha brass. I'm going to load up 5 pieces of this virgin alpha. I'm just going to put a very light, proper ID chamfer on these things. Here, I'll bring you guys along with me. So just a very light ID chamfer, what I would consider a proper chamfer. And then we're going to wheel over here to the CPS. Oops, no, I did it. It's the one that I did earlier. See, you guys can't see that yet. That's a new thing we're doing. That's a new product. Can't show the new products yet. Alright. Just stick some primers in there. Okay, we've got our primed cases. It'll be interesting to see. All right, so I'm gonna powder these things up, and let's see what this alpha virgin brass does to our seating depth here. Wow. Okay, well that's interesting. That's a massive deviation between my properly manicured cases, and let's see what that did to the, yeah, and see, because the force was so much greater, it seated it almost 10 thousandths longer than the rest of these. So we'll try another few here, see how they end up. So it's almost a guarantee that these alpha cases are going to shoot differently than my fire-formed, heavily manicured loads. You can hear that motor in this machine grunt quite a bit. A lot more than with the normal cases that I'm running, that's for sure. So let's see what 5 of these look like. Pretty consistent so far. This is brand new virgin Alpha OCD 6-dasher. Oh, whoops. It would help if I put a bullet in it, huh? There we go. And we'll just delete this little guy down here. Okay, so there's the difference between all of my cases, and I did 5 virgin alpha cases. So we'll delete those out of there. Just, let's see, I'm gonna get a picture of all this first, because that's pretty cool. Sorry for the delay, folks. I just need to get a quick picture of this for interested parties. Good enough. Yeah, well, I'm going to shoot them all next to each other, so we'll see how they behave. But I'll be sure to collect velocity on them. You can bet that when I shoot them. So I'll be sure to make another video in the future about that. Now I'm going to go ahead and delete those things just because I don't want them messing up my session. And that's how easy it is to change your data. And I'm not sure if you need to save the file or not, but I don't want to lose everything if I happen to want to look at it later. So well, that is interesting. I mean, that just shows just how precise this press is. I mean, it can tell the difference between just about the smallest variation. The interesting part is, so what are we testing here, right? It's awesome inline die. The components I'm using are great. These cases were all sized with the Short Action Customs 6-dasher die. So very good die, very good results. And it shows when you come back to look at the graph for bullet seating. I think we'll we'll go to about 100 here, and then I'll cut the live stream off, just so we don't run into time problems. There's not really any reason why I couldn't use this thing for my primary bullet seating press, because as soon as I'm done seating a bullet, the Prometheus has another charge ready for me, and I'm not sitting here waiting for it really, so it isn't as if I could go faster anyway. So I don't see any real need to not use it. It's kind of relaxing, actually. I mean, loading ammo on this thing is pretty relaxing, because you don't have to run a handle. I don't have to run a press handle. So if nothing else, it's at least just a different physical operation, and it's lightweight. It doesn't demand anything of me, that's for certain. Yeah, big tall spike on that one. He's getting to the side. Like I say, I don't know if that initial seating force spike, if that is going to change anything or not, or is this one having much more force across the entirety? Is that one going to be the one that creates the problem? It'll be interesting to see that. That one ran up high too. And MJ Wolf says, I wonder if that's the bullet slightly off center. Yeah, I don't know. Could be, you know, like if you're talking when it enters, you know, if it's just slightly off to one side, I'm not sure. So one way is, you know, technically some of that should show up in a concentricity test. So I'm going to take some of these that I called out and see just how they rate in terms of how they measure out, how concentric they are, how they sit as far as bullet seating depth, and you know, that'll probably tell me a little bit. Yikes. Look at that. Something way different about that case. Yeah, he's going to go off all by himself. That one. I wonder how the overall length sits on him then because of that. Well, it's not out by a lot, but it's pretty much the same. I mean, it's right there within a half a thou of my target. So whatever the issue is with that one, it didn't show up on overall on base to ogive. But that's, I mean, we're 94 traces deep here, and that's like whoosh, all off by itself. Alright, number 100 coming right up. And there we are. So I ended up culling off about 26, 27 of them. Well, actually, really, yeah, so we've got, these are the alpha cases. These two were like that one and that one. So we'll see how those are. And then I used these three to get set up and just calibrate the die and everything. So really, we've got like 23 cases that are basically the outliers in the uppermost portion of that initial spike there. So I'm going to see if that initial seeding force is what matters, or if it's somewhere through here that matters. But realistically, what does that window mean? Can it be proven that these down here, which I have a couple of those culled, right? The very bottom here and the very top here, I've grabbed several cases. Will they shoot different than each other, right? Or is it over here that matters the most? So that's all going to be very interesting to see over time. But anyway, you guys got to come along for my first actual session of 100 loaded rounds on the new AMP bullet seeder. Until next time.